Hello again and welcome to Creative Walks. This is episode 11. Yesterday I announced on my social media that I actually had launched this project, Creative Walks, because we had already 10 episodes and I decided to wait a little bit to put it out there on my social media channels because I was, to be honest, not very sure I was going to be able to keep doing this every day and if it would be at all interesting, and even worse, that it would pass the test of being interesting even for me. So in the end, after a week of doing these episodes, I decided that it was a cool thing to do it. I thought it would be beneficial to both people that are listening to this and to myself as well, because it's a way to organize my thoughts. And when you talk or when you write, you're actually thinking out loud. You're actually going through the process of discovering what you think. And what I noticed in this 10 episodes is that a lot of associations and a lot of things that they appeared spontaneously, and I believe they would not have occurred unless I had started it. And with that, I wanted to do one recommendation. It's a tip that I think it's one of the most valuable things I've heard. It was a suggestion from an author named Julia Cameron. She has a book called The Artist Way. She does a lot of work on that book about getting unstuck, getting back in touch with your creativity. It's sort of like more for people that are kind of afraid to jump into an artwork, and it's more for that people that are like in the, as Chase Jarvis says, the 0 to 1 and not the 1 to 100. But it has one invaluable exercise that I highly recommend that you do. It's something that I do. Try to do very often, depending on the time. If I'm really stuck, I actually do it very, very, very often. And this exercise, it's called an artist date. An artist date doesn't mean you're going to go date an artist, although I actually recommend this eventually. And my wife is looking at me very, very suspiciously right now. So the idea of an artist date, it's basically you take yourself on a date. Yeah, sorry, you are the artist in this situation. You take yourself on a date, and she recommends that you do this every week. So the idea is, when we're younger, we're actually put in situations that we actually have to learn new things, or we're put in situations that are new and sometimes exciting. And that opens up a lot of opportunities. When you are an adult, sometimes you go from work to home, home to work, and then you try to get blasted in the weekend and drink yourself to death, or just go to the club or whatever else you do. And then you try to escape your whole life when you go on a vacation, and they're usually very frenetic because you try to go to 3, 4, 5 different countries so you can stamp them on your passport so you can pretend that you are a big world traveler, right? So you never get the chance to take yourself into new fields and new ideas and new experiences voluntarily. So what she recommends is that you take yourself on this date every week to do something different. That can be pottery, can be go watch a different kind of music. You can literally just go to the library and randomly choose books, something that I really like to do. And again, it doesn't have to be any specific thing as to tie in with the subjects that I've been talking about. It has to be something that you are curious about or that intrigues you in some way. Let me give you an example of a somewhat recent, I was still in Toronto when it happened, of artist date that I went that was absolutely fascinating. There was at the Royal Ontario Museum some talks that happen basically every week or every other week. And one of them was about the history of indigo, of the ink that makes blue jeans, for example. And that sounded to be like about as dry and as interesting as, I don't know, pulling teeth. But in the end, and I decided to go because I knew I was wrong about that. I knew that when you look deeply enough, everything is interesting. And in this case, it actually showed how rare blue inks are in the world and how over time it became so valuable all across the world, from India to China to South America to North America. And then she was weaving in all these ideas that were relating this specific kind of ink and how it relates to world cultures and how it relates to fashion. And those are literally the things that I'm most passionate about. So just from going to a random talk in a random museum, I got this affirmation and this way of connecting a lot of the projects that I'm interested in. And that happens again and again and again and again with me. And that's why I'm very confident to suggest to you to go on this artist date. A couple of things that I differ from Julia Cameron in the way that I approach this. She recommends that you do this on your own, meaning your artist date is you taking yourself on a date with something. I think there is a valid point to it, especially because you're not having to have a pressure with other people or negotiate going on oh, let's try this or let's try that with your spouse or a significant other or someone else. So there is something to be said about doing this on your own. But to me, it is something that you can make it into a social quest. It's something that you can help transform you and any other person that you want to get with. And it also will help you try to get some consistency on your artist dates. You can, for example, get someone that you know, that is a friend, you tell them about this idea, and then you both try something, because sometimes I find that people are very shy to go out on their own or go to a museum on their own or things like that. So one trick to get your first artist date started, in case you don't have an idea already of where and what you want to do and try, here's my suggestion. I suggest that you consider your city as if you were a tourist. Whenever we go to another city, another country, another place, we treat it very differently than the city where we are at. I have lived in basically 3 countries so far, and people always are impressed by the way that I try to find things to do in the city. And I usually can find pretty quickly things that even the locals don't know exist, from bands or museums or things that are happening, and people that have been living there for their whole lives. And those things that are very cool opportunities in your own city, they become invisible because you were not taking the 20 seconds effort to go look for those things. They're very cool. They're happening in your town. So what I recommend is you treat as if it was a tourist. So literally go see what are the places in your city or activities that are touristic in nature. Maybe there is a very cool park you haven't gone to see. Maybe there is like a new museum or a cool exhibit, or there is like a room escape kind of activity or things like that. And the advantage of being a local doing that is that you can actually then engage with the people that are offering that service. And you may be able even to make like new friends, new acquaintances, and get into those kinds of things. That's the first thing that I recommend. Treat it as a tourist. Going a little bit beyond that, usually cities have a directory, some sort of blog or your local newspaper. They have a list of a lot of events that are happening in your city. And those events usually are not like the big ones that you will actually have heard about. They will be small things like, I remember seeing here in Kyiv, for example, there is one website that has a lot of the events that are like very popular, but they also have very, very obscure ones. So people can update their new projects, new ideas, and then you'll be able to find a lot of very, very, very cool things happening. And it does not matter if your city is small or if it's like a big megalopolis. Actually, if your city is small, you will find people that are trying to do, especially like in theater or music, you will find people that are trying to get people to come to their events and no one comes. And then you decide to go and travel and spend a lot of money to go to touristic places elsewhere. So try to find those places in your city. One thing I wanted to mention as well is that you do not need to have, if you're trying to find an excuse that you don't have money or things like that, you do not need to expend money to do this. There are everywhere all the time a lot of free events that you can do, and those are usually very, very interesting and you can engage with that. The other thing that I will recommend as an artist date, that will require another person, so it sort of goes against what Julia Cameron suggests, but it's what I think is a very cool idea, is if you have a friend that knows a specific kind of skill that he would like to learn, and he or she would like to learn from you another skill, you can do this trading of creative activities. That's a very cool thing that you can do. I've done that with photography. I've done that with music. It's sort of like I teach, for example, how to like get your photographs better, and the person teaches me, I don't know, Comanche, for example. I did this. Comanche is a string instrument, so I got my first class for free from this person, and I gave her a free class in photography. I did my first singing lesson with a friend, and I taught her some basic Arabic rhythms in an instrument that I play called the duff. So you can get very creative if you don't have any money, and I think that actually will be even more interesting. Also remember that if you're going to go to a museum, for example, most museums have either one day or a few hours that they have no entrance fee. So you can actually go and explore and find objects that you find interesting, but that will be for another day. So that's my suggestion on where to get started. That's my recommendation for the day. Let me know if you heard about this. I suggest you take a look at Julia Cameron's work if you're interested in the stuff that I've been talking about. It's Artist Way, her book. She has a few other ones, but that's the main canon one. And I will talk to you tomorrow.